All right, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So we are here to talk about the big buzzword these days, which is omnichannel. I'd love to start off by hearing how you would define omnichannel and, actually, before we get into that, tell me about yourself.
Cool. All right, well, hello everyone. My name is Clinton. Started my career in management consulting, where quickly realized I knew a whole lot of nothing, which was then the foray to go brand side and join Vans to head up global membership, and then join Coach, based out of New York, to head up our digital practice, and now work with On. Very commonly misconstrued as QC or cloud, but we're working on kind of the market awareness there. At On, I head up e-commerce, as mentioned, of which consists of performance marketing, CRM, merchandising, digital product, and I'm blanking on one, and go-to-market. So I think overall a fairly vast structure, and I think a really interesting way to go to market across the full funnel. So I think a lot of innovation around how we're combining different functions, really thinking about the integrated marketing space, and so excited to chat and share some insights on marketing overall.
Great, yeah. I see that you're sporting the brand right now. Very cool.
Walking advertisement here.
Yes, of course. So yeah, let's get into omnichannel. So I'd love to hear first how you're defining omnichannel strategy, and what does that look like for On?
Yeah, omnichannel, as mentioned, a very common buzzword, but the way we think of omnichannel is really being very intentional about product distribution, the platforms that we partner with, and the wholesale doors that we go to market with. And I think it's being very intentional about how your brand shows up across all phases of the buying journey, if you will. And I think what that offers in many cases is the ability for brands to have much more control, and with control is better orchestration on your go-to-market model and really orchestrating that consumer journey. So I realize I threw out even more buzzwords there, but really it is about being very intentional about where your brand shows up and understanding it's not just brand.com, it's not just your own brick and mortar, but where you show up across paid media, across different wholesale partners, and being very intentional and really being forthcoming about the decisions you make and where you show up with consumers.
So how does that look like? What does that look like for On? You know, what are the wholesale partners you're working with, and how are you making sure that the brand shows up across the board in a cohesive and seamless way?
Yeah, I think On's journey is very interesting in the sense that you have your pure play D2C brands like your Aways, your Allbirds of the world. Then you have your more traditional wholesale doors. I think On has been very intentional about how we're going to market and being very aware of kind of the capital investments to start in a nascent space. So for context, On has been around for 12 years, of which at today's or last year's earnings eclipsed 1.2 billion in revenue. So just in terms of scale, looking at how fast the brand has grown, instead of over-indexing on one channel versus another, we've been very intentional about what doors to open with. And so examples will be if there isn't a run competency, which is really a core value proposition of the brand, that's a door we won't open. And really being intentional about product fit and understanding that if you show up alongside, let's say, a fashion brand, there's going to be optics and perception of what you stand for. So for On specifically, it's been about being very intentional and capital light in terms of market awareness and leveraging wholesale to help with that journey. The second phase of that was our own brand.com. So really the idea being you acquire the customer through a non-owned channel, and then you bring them back brand side. And there's a lot of strategies there to really orchestrate that. And the most forthcoming is really being intentional about your product strategy and really having your pinnacle product be with your own brand.com such that you're not training consumers to constantly go to a Nordstrom or a different partner to make that second purchase. And then lastly, I think kind of our most current foray is to be focused on our own brick and mortar. And really that emphasizes the importance of a physical presence. I think a lot of brands have run towards digital, especially during the COVID era, and really understanding that customers genuinely connect with a physical experience has been one we've recognized through our wholesale success. And so really being intentional about understanding that as an initial sticking point, and then using digital to be better targeting versus assuming that you could invest media dollars in a digital space, make a connection with the consumer, and then realize your ROAS starts to be less efficient in the long run. So across the landscape, it's really being intentional about each channel and then understanding where we are at the life cycle of the brand and then investing heavier and heavier as we understand the growth versus going into pure play D2C versus a pure play wholesale.
I'd love to unpack the value of having that physicality, you know, a place where a customer can interact with the product, especially for a shoe brand. You know, you want to feel the material, you want to try it on. Do you think that we're at a point now that brands across all consumer industries where they really do need to have that kind of physical option in order to drive growth?
Yeah, I may butcher this, but there's a quote that really stood out to me. Nothing viral wasn't first physical. So anything that goes viral has to have occurred in a physical space. And I think understanding that strategy is why we as a brand have invested so much into physical retail. I think industry specific, as a core run brand where we inspire movement as part of our core mantra, there is an element of having specialty run doors, which is really that white glove service. And I think that also has an impact in terms of brand affinity. But also understanding that not everyone here is a core runner, and the market opportunity for, let's just say, casual wear is one that we also need to chase. So fully agree and align that a physical presence is absolutely required. And therein lies where event marketing comes in. So really understanding that the stickiness for us we've seen is that a physical initial touch point is what creates that stickiness, and then leveraging digital to being able to capture that retained audience is kind of the way we've mapped out our overall marketing strategy.
One thing that you mentioned before is that having this kind of omni-channel strategy gives a brand more control. I'd love to hear a little bit more about why you think that is. I also think that there might be this misconception that, you know, when you're working with a wholesaler, that wholesaler has all this data about your customers that you no longer have access to. So what would you say about control in an omni-channel setting and, you know, being able to successfully gather that customer data no matter where they're purchasing your product?
Yeah, with regards to control, I think the inevitable truth is that as you scale, you lose control. And as much as we aspire to have full autonomy of the brand, at a certain point, that gets lost at the cost of scale. And for us, how we've mitigated some of those behaviors is being hyper intentional about the partners that we work with. And we've been very lucky to be selective in that space. But I also think the relevance here is the self-awareness of what your brand, where you're at in the brand maturity curve. So if you're a new brand and one of your kind of growth levers in terms of awareness is about launching in wholesale doors, being very understanding that you may not have as favorable terms, but then being very cognizant of revisiting those terms once you understand the reverse value proposition of the brand. So I think that's kind of one element and area that we should really lean into. And so being very intentional, and if, let's say, the product fit and the wholesale fit doesn't come to fruition, being okay to say no, and then exploring other growth levers. So very brand specific, industry specific, but being hyper intentional about the partners that you work with is one way to kind of combat an inevitable control loss, and constantly revisiting those relationships will kind of help that long-term success.
So when a brand is exploring a potential new retail partnership, what kinds of questions should they be asking to make sure that it's the right fit for them?
Yeah, I think with respect to new door openings, having that self-awareness first and foremost to understand what levers that you have. The second, I would really not underestimate the working relationship you may have with the management team. I think with regards to really understanding what's important for you as a brand. So if you're in a more mature state and you really want to understand cross-sell, upsell opportunities, and then to be able to negotiate data governance policies and procedures, that's one element to better understand, is the partner you're working with the Amazons of the world where you're lucky to be on that marketplace platform. If you're a more nascent brand and you're looking for more favorable margin returns, and there is a lot of scrutiny around kind of profitability, there's another signal. So I guess coming full circle, I think there's a huge emphasis on the ability to work with the management team and understand what are your non-negotiables versus what that retailer offers, and then putting that all into perspective. And so not a perfect model, but I think overall it's really being true to what is the most important variables to negotiate, how lenient that partner is with respect to those, and then really deciding thereafter if it's worth the compromise on whether or not this partner may not be the perfect customer acquisition vehicle for your target consumer, but in return, you'll get the offerings of data control or things of that nature. And there's a lot of levers to pull here around just product exclusivity and things like that. So I guess it's really understanding your brand's value proposition, what that partner is looking for, and then constantly revisiting those terms and being very succinct and clear. There is no, in good faith. I think we just need to be very clear as to what are the terms that are most important to us, our non-negotiables, and put that in writing, and then really take it from there.
Yeah. When it comes to revisiting those terms, first of all, how frequently can you realistically do that as a brand? Like, what do you need to be able to show in order to have that conversation? And then also in between those conversations, are there any tactics that can help brands to really nurture those relationships and put them in a good position with a wholesale partner so they are on good terms when they want to renegotiate?
Yeah, it's a very situational conversation. I think terms shouldn't be revisited on a monthly basis per se, but what I can share based on past experience is really leaning on the relationship. So I think one of the common things to be on watch out for is how do you not cannibalize each other's business, especially in a digital space. And so really understanding and having a true relationship with your partners, i.e. digital bidding, right? I mean, if you search on Cloud Nova, which is a franchise we have, you'll see all of our partner doors prioritized in search. And so to be able to have candid conversations around, hey, these are terms that we own from a bidding perspective, how do we work together to bring it down? And if the answer is, hey, you're part of the funnel and from a digital marketing perspective, we can't control this versus you're a very strategic partner for us, how do we work together to really subside some of the unintended competition? I think it's just being aware that having a direct connection with the brand, being aware of where are your growth drivers and how are they nurturing that, and then having a direct line both from a marketing and product perspective is the recommendation I would have. And in terms of renegotiating terms, I mean, this is a very kind of annualized exercise, if at all, and it really does predicate upon something to have changed. Whereas, let's say, when we first started, we had the most favorable terms to our wholesale partners, and it was try our product for free and return everything that doesn't sell, to now understanding the reverse proposition of we are generating brand equity and demand and funneling customers into wholesale doors. So that is an inflection point that brands can really understand and say, this is a time to really reconsider the reverse value prop. So to the extremes of renegotiating contracts, I think that's to the level that one would have to really seek, versus the day-to-day conversation should be really controlled through relationships.
Mm-hmm. Going back to this idea of control, when you're working with a wholesale partner as a brand, you're not just having that wholesale partner get this really valuable data on your customers. You're also putting them in control of your customers' experience if they're purchasing from that Nordstrom or that Saks. So what would you say to brands that might be a little bit nervous about that? This idea that you always want your customers to have a positive experience with your brand no matter where they're shopping, but how do you guarantee that?
Yeah, I'm not going to spend too much time on this one because I think it really goes back to the relationships and the intention. And so we have a saying internally of go deep, not wide. So it's much easier to control the ecosystem of where product distribution lies when you have 5 key partners. And I think the reverse end of that spectrum is the fact that you might be over-reliant on certain partners. So I think there is a healthy balance of broad distribution and not to rely so much so. And that's where we come full circle of an omni-channel approach. Once the relationship potentially gets saturated, do you consider marketplaces? Do you consider new product verticals? Do you consider different platform investments? So I think it really is not a one-size-fits-all, but really being thoughtful about how deep and wide you go. And from then on, it's all about the relationships you garner.
And when you're working with an omni-channel strategy, how do you think about driving customer loyalty? Does that change your approach to how you're making sure customers are coming back to your brand again and again?
Yeah, I think membership is a very commonly well understood investment for lots of brands. And I think the beauty of On is that we are really starting to think about it and bifurcating it across account creation and truly what a membership program should offer. And so early stages yet, because On does not have a membership program, but I think stickiness happens through a lot of things that folks may be aware of here today: personalized experiences, really having a best post-purchase experience, order to delivery timelines being met across the increased demand towards product delivered yesterday. And so I think there's no one size fits all, but I think to not overinvest into a concept called loyalty, which is really account creation and data capture. There are a lot of ways outside of that mechanism around the full journey across, much more integrated brick and mortar experiences like buy online, pick up in store. So there's an element of convenience, there's an element of personalization, and then there's an element of really garnering a community and enabling that community to cross interact with each other, and the brand leading that orchestration of that relationship. We have not yet figured it out, and that's why we've been very intentional about not releasing another membership program that you'll sign up once for that offer for 20% off and then never sign in again. So understanding that, we're really focused on the core, and then we'll evolve that into the community-based engagement.
Yeah, that community building, where does that happen? Is that on social? Is that in store events? How are you cultivating that sense of community amongst your customers that's then helping to drive loyalty to the brand?
Yeah, all of the above. I would say, we have a social engagement team, so engaging with all consumers across social platforms, really ensuring we have best-in-class white glove-esque type service in our brick and mortar stores, having the best events that we can host, and then really bringing and inviting all of those folks that might be interested. I think it's the full funnel, and really not really disregarding the importance of a physical interaction with a customer. I think the other aspect of that is customer service and support. I think seldom it's about how do you acquire that first purchase and then have retention campaigns, but it's really more, hey, I called customer service, did I wait 10 hours and not get a response? So it's really thinking about not just the front end of the experience, but then to be able to really nurture that and really make it a seamless buying experience post that initial buy.
In our last couple of minutes, I'd love to know if there are any misconceptions you think that brands might have about omni-channel strategies and what you would say about those.
Yeah, misconceptions, I think there is no one size fits all. I think having brand awareness and self-awareness around the maturity of the brand and what each channel serves. So for example, a Nike, a wholesale partnership means something very different than an On, vice versa. And so I think it's been interesting to see the shifts in investment away from wholesale. I mean, wholesale used to be this kind of, an environment people didn't want to go in. And now we have folks returning into those spaces. So I think really as an organization, partnering within, so at On, we are very intentional about product and marketing strategy, and they all lay into each other. So it's with intention that we have a Cloud Coast sitting in our D2C doors, and then a different variation of that in a wholesale door. So I think how I would share and answer that question is really understand the life cycle of the brand, understand the objectives, and then the tactics that follow. One of the opportunities can be wholesale. One of the opportunities can be expanded platform investments. It could be digital distribution. It could be physical brick and mortar. So it's really just laying that out for what your brand is best served for.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing all this advice. I think this is really interesting, and of course, it's a huge topic for a lot of brands right now. All right, can we get a round of applause for Clinton?
Thanks for having me.
Great. Yeah. All right, I think that it's almost time for happy hour, which I'm sure people are excited about. So thank you guys for joining us.
check, check. All right, wait, before we go, let's just give one big round of applause to the staff here. Shout out my boy Ishan from Grow, Chris on the mic, all of the security, everybody who set this up. This thing gets better every year. We got AC this year, and and it's all because of the staff here at Grow. So big thank you to everybody at Grow. You got anything else?
I really don't, but I think we do have some other plans after this.
Yes, we've got happy hour upstairs. Start, pregame. We've got the after party, which is in Soho. If you guys don't know where that is or you're not aware of that, come find me, and I'll tell you about it. And then that starts at 6. It goes till 10, and then I'm sure some people will go out after that.
Absolutely. And again, for all the people who did learn things today, feel free to also share it on social. I think the way events like this get more awareness too is for other people to realize it's happening. So again, thank you to the entire Grow team, the Ishan and team, and just incredible time.
All right, guys, one more round of applause for yourselves.